Doctors and nurses of Reddit who have delivered babies to mothers who clearly cheated on their husbands, what was that like? I already made a comment, but I do have a story about a close call of this nature. So, a few years ago I responded to an ad of the NSFW nature. I was feeling adventurous of a request for a man to fulfill a cuckold fantasy. Basically they wanted a man who looked similar to the boyfriend of the couple to f the girlfriend while the boyfriend watched. There was a whole act about it. She'd call me by his name, I'd act clearly different and more sexually aggressive than him, let the lie slip up a few times and badly cover it up, which she'd buy it 100%. You know, make a whole act about it, like playing out a porn script. Anyway, the deed is done and 9 months later I get a call from the girlfriend. She's pregnant and expecting within the week. And they're worried I might be the father. I did use a condom but she wasn't on the pill and the paranoia was understandable. Also they hadn't had sex for a week before and a couple weeks after, so the timing matched up. The baby came out. Either of us could be the father, as it looks vaguely like both of us. It was a boy, by the way. Naturally it was tense and awkward as hell. It took a week for the DNA test to get back. The delay was agonizing. Thankfully it came back that I was in the clear. There was actually a bit of a celebration. When I got the word I cheered. They hugged. I gave them a handshake and a hug. Said my congratulations. Went home and drunk a whole damn bottle of Absolute vodka to celebrate. So a friend of mine, he is unfortunately dead, had cancer and he was dating a girl for about 2 years. He then discovered he had cancer and that he would live at best 1 more year. His girlfriend announced to him a week later that she was pregnant. They were both white. He kept on saying that life is a joke. He was happy because he would have a baby now, but sad because he would die in a year. Anyway, 9 months later the baby was born and it was black. Felt so sorry. Anesthesiologist here. C-sections are typically done under spinal anesthesia, and were the ones at the head of the table keeping the mother calm and talking her through the procedure while the surgeons operate. I've seen it more than once. But I remember one in particular when the parents were both very Caucasian, and the baby was very much not. The actual father obviously had to be very dark-skinned. At delivery, when the not father saw the baby, he just looked down at his wife who was starting to cry and calmly said, "You whore," and walked out. She started screaming for him to come back. But there wasn't much she could do since she was, you know, still being operated on. She lost it to the point I eventually had to sedate her just a bit because she was in danger of injuring herself. As far as I know, her husband never came back to the hospital. I don't know what happened after that. In high school my gym teacher was married to the biology teacher, who was also really good friends with my math teacher. Always saw them chatting and walking together. Well, the bio teacher got pregnant, and when she brought the baby in there was an unignorable resemblance to the math teacher. Her husband ended up driving to the nearest hospital and shooting himself dead in the parking lot. Was a big scandal at our relatively small private school. One of a few actually. A friend of mine tells the story of his aunt giving birth in the 1970s or 80s to a baby that at first glance appeared to be of Asian descent. Aunt and her husband are both Caucasian Midwesterners from long lines of the same sort. Going back to Germany, there was evidently a shocked moment, and then the aunt's father, my friend's grandfather, quipped, "Well, they say 1 in 7 babies is born Chinese," and everyone laughed. The tension broke. Long enough for the doctor, also a white Midwesterner of German stock, said that likely the kid's color is just off due to the events of the birth. That baby is now a man in his 30s or 40s, and looks like your typical Midwesterner. He just had some tinge to his skin for a few hours following the birth, plus some dark hair at birth that has since lightened up. Paramedic here. Had a mother give birth to a healthy baby in a home. Situational awareness had not helped me yet at this point. I asked if the father was here to cut the cord. We paramedics usually shy away from this duty because it opens us up to unwanted legal ramifications should something go wrong. There was a calm in the air after I asked the question and went on to do it myself. Come a few moments later, I was approached by another occupant of the home who informed me that this was a home for victims of sexual assault and that the father of the baby was indeed also the father of the mother and was currently incarcerated due to the aforementioned situation. It was an awkward ride to the hospital after that. Paramedic here. Our crew delivered a full berth in the back of our rig. We have 2 paramedics in the back with the PT, a driver, and I'm working on the laptop listening to info they are telling me to add to the report. All of a sudden, it goes kind of quiet. I hear the mother let out a very loud "oh shit, it's not white. She was very white." Few more seconds of silence. And I'm like, the driver alarm beeping light on the center console sent from a button in the back was pressed 2 times quickly, generally meaning to turn around to get info for the report. I turn from the front passenger seat to see a very dark skin-colored baby. I'm guessing Cuban. I can't see the mother's face, but all I see is her shaking her head. She begins to worry, saying that her husband is meeting us there at the hospital. He can't see this. I just continue the report, and am not sure what the problem is, but I guess we'll see when we get there. Flash forward to the we stop outside the ambulance bay. I get out to open the doors, and am met by another very white heavy-set guy in a uniform shirt, dress pants and glasses. Asked me if his wife was in there and she was in labor when he was coming home. Hospital policy dictates that we can't have random people that we can't confirm identity that close to the rig when opening doors for PT safety. Security is there quick, holds him back a bit. We open the doors, roll the PT and her newborn out. He takes one look, sees the color of the baby, jaw drop, look of despair, like a 1,000-yard stare. Even security had a look like, wow, that woman f***ed up, and this guy knows it now. Wife, babe, I can explain every bit of this. I know it looks weird, but I can. We wheel her into no sign of husband. Last I knew, the husband didn't check into the hospital as a visitor. I'm assuming he went home to pack his stuff. Okay, I am a nurse, but this isn't a story about a birth I witnessed. It was my own birth. And although my mother definitely didn't cheat, all the midwives were convinced she had. And yeah, it'll be buried, but I think it's a funny story, so I'm going to share. For background, my mother Jay is white, and had got married young to another white guy D, actually forced to by my grandparents, who were horrified she was living in sin. Their relationship petered out and they separated but remained very good friends. Then she met my father, a black man, and began a relationship with him. Mum was still married at the time. Neither her nor her husband were in a hurry to get divorced, and he became good friends with Mum's new partner, my dad. Mum fell pregnant with me. Time moves along. She goes into labor and needs to head up to the hospital. Dad was working and couldn't make it home in time to get her there. So still being good friends with the husband, she rings him and he comes around to drive her to hospital and decides to hang out until I'm born. After an hour or so, Dad arrives. He was freaking out a bit, so his best friend H, also a black guy, drove him because Dad didn't trust himself. They arrive at the hospital right as Mum is ready to deliver. The midwives come out to the waiting room to grab the husband to be there when baby is born. They knew that Mum's actual husband D had driven her there, so assumed that he was the father of the baby. Went and grabbed him and tried to drag him into the delivery room. He freaked out and yelled, "No, I'm not the father. I'm just the husband. The father is Aboriginal." Dad and H pulled up into the car park as this is happening, and Dad leaps out of the car, decides he needs to have a quick smoke to settle his nerves before he goes in. His best friend H doesn't smoke cigarettes but does smoke weed and is pretty stoned, so he walks in ahead. Just then the midwives come running back to the waiting room to grab the actual father, and see the only black guy in there. Obviously him, right? So they take him and suit him up to bring him down to delivery. Being pretty stoned, H doesn't question this and just goes along with it. The midwives reach the delivery room and shove him inside. Mum, legs in stirrups and at the pushing stage, goes absolutely ballistic. "Not that black guy. H.E.S. not the father. Go get the other one." The midwives hustle H out and return him to the waiting room to wait with D. My dad has come inside by now, and the midwives marched up to him and said something like, "I hope you're the father this time, otherwise I'm going to just give up and she can birth alone." So that's the story about how the hospital went through 3 different men before they finally got to my actual father. I was assisting at a cesarean when I was a junior doctor. The woman's dark-skinned partner had been in prison 9 months or so. I took the baby immediately upon delivery and announced cheerily, "It's a boy." Her first words were, "Is it black?" Luckily the baby was a mocha color that could have gone either way, and I told her in a mildly confused manner, "It could be." I know a guy who is fully white. His parents are both white and his younger sister is black. I always assumed she was adopted, and one day when I mentioned it, he looked at me weirdly and was like, no dude, that's my full-blood sister. Obviously I didn't believe it, and apparently neither did his dad at the birth. But they got the paternity test and she was his daughter. Likelihood is they've got some black ancestors far enough back to be forgotten about. I also know a dude who has a white Scottish mum, and a black Jamaican dad. Dude came out pale white with a ginger afro. Genetics were not on his side. Newborn had chlamydia. Got it from the mom, obviously. So the mom admits she was cheating on the dad. Because there's no other way to explain that one. Except the dad was cheating too, with the other guy's girlfriend. And all four of them had chlamydia, with no idea who had it first. They also had no idea who the actual dad was. That was a rodeo. Koalas. Kind of unrelated, but this lady at my church is a white female married to a white male. They have one younger kid who is the spitting image of his dad and obviously white. Then, they have an older kid that is quite visibly mixed. The kid has dark brown skin and curly African American hair and nonetheless looks nothing like the dad. So this lady claims that when she gave birth the hospital gave her baby a shot that turned him black. Therefore, we refer to this kid as Blackshot. Feel bad for the kid, but he truly believes the story and is in like 7th grade. We had a very sweet blonde-haired blue-eyed mom and dad along with their entire extended family in the room for a delivery one busy afternoon at work. Think aunts, uncles, cousins, grandma and grandpa too. The baby is born, and as the doctor places her on the mom's chest, the first words out of her mouth are, "That's not my baby. That's not my baby." The baby in question, still attached at the umbilical cord, has beautiful dark curly black hair, and dark skin. The nurse looks at her and tells her that this is definitely her baby because she's still attached to you, and she, not so quietly, tells the nurse, "There's no way. I never slept with a black man. It's not mine." The father is standing there silent, not sure what to do. A long awkward silence fills the room. We clean her and baby up as cheerfully as we can. We see the extended family filter out of the room and the father leave to get a cigarette. About 10 minutes later, a tall black guy walks up to our front desk asking how to get to the patient in question's room. This isn't exactly what you are looking for. But my mom is black and my dad is white. My mom had kids with her first husband who were black, and they were born somewhat light-skinned, which is common among black children. So she was expecting this. But when she gave birth to my eldest full brother, she thought something was wrong because of how pale he was. Nurse said that happens and he will get color. Fast forward to when it's time for them to go home. The nurses that are now on duty refused to let her go because obviously there had been some sort of mix-up. She was literally accused of trying to steal a white baby, and even with my dad there apparently, this kid was still too white to be mixed race. This was the early 80s, so crazy stuff went down in hospitals. Mind you, we lived in an area where mixed-race families were non-existent at the time. Another fast forward 16 years, and my brother has a mountain biking accident and a TBI. He is literally hanging on by a thread. His friend calls and my mom rushes over to the hospital. His friend is literally there saying, "Yes, this is his mom, and she has her ID. Bro didn't have an ID though, and they are refusing to let her in." They ask for clarification if he is adopted or something, but apparently, the truth was the wrong answer. Hospital security escorted her out and she had to have my dad come, who by the way was just let right in. I highly doubt under any other circumstance they would erroneously not let a parent see their injured child because they don't look like them, but my mom being black with a very light-skinned child was apparently an issue. But anyway, back to the question. I wonder how many families have had drama thanks to genetics being so unpredictable. If my mom was white with a black husband, I am certain everyone would think she cheated on my dad with a white guy. Heck, people even accuse my mom of using an egg donor. Sometimes genes even skip generations, so a trait that hasn't popped up in a few generations can just randomly show up. Consulted a couple who were expecting a baby and were confused about how she had chlamydia again. Turns out they both had chlamydia. Both got treated and continued doing their thing. She could not get her head round how she had it again if he was the only guy she had slept with. He just looked very sheepish as I tried to subtly explain maybe he had caught it from elsewhere and passed it on. Took a long time for the penny to drop. One of those couples where you realize the kid won't get help with their science homework from their parents. Had two women give birth a few days apart on my floor. Turns out they actually had the same baby daddy. The father of the two newborns got both patients pregnant around the same time. It was an interesting day for the social worker. Oh man, a friend of friend got two women pregnant, several months apart. One of the women had complications during the pregnancy and the baby was born very early. On the exact same day the other woman also went into labor. Father has two babies. Same date of birth. Different mothers. The women knew about one another. One ended up being insane and unfit and bolted. So the other woman is raising both kids.